Welcome back to the Grow Your Nutrition Business podcast, powered by Healthy Steps Nutrition Mentoring. At Healthy Steps Nutrition, we believe something as fundamental as nutrition shouldn't be complicated, which is why we focus on that simple, habit-based approach. But we know in order to help our clients become the best and healthiest versions of themselves, it isn't just about what they eat or going to the gym a few hours a week. We have to look at a holistic approach, addressing nutrition, sleep, stress management, mindset, lifestyle, support system, and of course, exercise. Our mission is to help 1 million people take control of their health one step at a time so they can prevent and reverse chronic disease. I know that we're not going to be able to do that alone, which is why we have the mentoring program to empower gym owners and coaches, fitness and health enthusiasts just like you to use the framework to make a greater impact in your community. Today's podcast guest is Dr. Greg Wells. This is not the first time that he has been on the podcast. He is an expert in sleep and stress management. He actually helped write the Precision Nutrition, Sleep, Stress, and Recovery course. He just released a book called Powerhouse. Elevate your energy, optimize your health, surcharge your performance. I wanted to have him on the podcast to talk about how we can apply some of the principles he talked about in his book to our coaching programs. We talk specifically about breathwork and also cold exposure therapy, cold plunges. We also take a deeper dive into, the whirlwind of the past few years and how do we get our clients back to a place of thriving and growth. He has a great 3 Ps that he uses. I'm excited for you to learn them. Take notes with this episode. I know you're going to be able to practically apply a lot of these things in your coaching experience with your clients. Enjoy this episode. Dr. Greg Wells, welcome back to the Grow Your Nutrition Business podcast. So excited to have you here today.
Nicole, it's so good to see you again. We had an awesome chat before we even started pressing record. So I love you guys and just super thrilled to be back with you.
You are an expert on sleep, stress, recovery. And I want to take a few minutes. I think we're going to dive a lot into this piece of stress. I think you and I were, right before we hit record, we were talking about burnout and people just struggling more now than ever. Like, what are you seeing? And why are we in this state that we're in where so many people are just like, I'm done, I'm tired?
Well, obviously there's been this, I think there was a global pandemic or something like that happened.
Maybe.
And so everyone had to they work from home and then they're back in the office or whatever. And it's been an interesting few years on so many different levels. But as a speaker and an author and a coach and moving back and forth between different industries, doesn't matter what industry you're in, fitness, medicine, whatever, music, everyone is burned out. Everyone is so tired. And I really just want to help people now get back to flourishing, experiencing joy, finding purpose, but most importantly, having the energy to actually put into the things that we care about the most, rather than just sort of languishing and being in survival mode, which is where we've been for the last little while. So that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm trying to work on. That's what I'm trying to help people with. And there is scientific evidence for what we can do to feel better, but getting that information out to everyone is going to be a bit of a challenge, but that's what we're doing. That's why we're here on this show.
Yeah. I've seen it more now than ever with gym owners just tired and struggling and wanting to change even sometimes industries because they're like, I did the best that I could. I'm doing it. I'm ready to pass the torch to someone else because I'm burnt out and I need a break. And the unfortunate part is we all got in this industry to help people and transform lives. And if we're going from this industry of helping people with nutrition, fitness, wellness, health, and then we're changing career paths altogether, are we still going to be truly fulfilled with the new direction that we go? Or do we just need to find this balance and happiness with where we're at right now?
I think that obviously finding happiness with where we're at right now is the ultimate goal, but maybe we need to change paths in order to be able to do that. And maybe what we're doing now isn't the best thing. And maybe we can pivot a little bit and find something new. And all of those are big decisions for people. Where I'm trying to help people right now is to have energy on a daily basis to enable you to be able to do that, whether it's stay in your job that you have right now or in your field that you're in right now and do the best you can, or find a better way to share your talents and share your knowledge and share your ideas and share your help with other people to elevate the world around us. And the cool thing is, I think that when you break it down, when I was trying to figure out what to write in my new book, it's called Powerhouse. The idea was really, okay, everyone's burned out. So what do we do? Excuse me. What do we do? And how do we get over this fatigue? How do we get over this being tired all the time? And the answer is energy. Okay, cool. So how do we get more energy? Well, if you're in fitness, we have these little things called mitochondria. And with mitochondria inside of our bodies, we can actually make them and help them to work better. We can make new mitochondria. We can make stronger mitochondria. And there's so much science to back up how we can make our mitochondria better. They're in every tissue of the body except red blood cells. They're in every single other type of cell that we have. And there are things we can do to make them work better so that we have more energy, so we can overcome this burnout and have more energy to apply to the things that we care about the most in our lives. So that's kind of why I'm so excited at the moment, despite the fact that things are kind of messed up. There's loads of uncertainty, lots of change coming, war in Europe, like all of these things that are coming at us. I'm just trying to help people on a daily basis have a bit more energy so we can help the most people that we possibly can.
You've done a lot of research on stress and sleep and optimizing performance. That was the original podcast that we'll link in the show notes that we did together. And, what are some of the things that people should be thinking about in regards to increased energy? What are some things that we should be even starting with?
I think one of the coolest, I'll call it a trend right now, but one that I like, one that I think has got a lot of evidence behind it, is breathwork. And I kind of feel like meditation has been awesome. Like there was yoga and then meditation, and the next sort of iteration growth of that is going to be breathwork as we all discover and learn it. I actually did my doctorate on breathing 20 years ago, which people thought was really weird at the time. It's like 20 years later, it's finally having its moment.
Wow.
But the reason why I think I'm so excited about it is because if we think about mitochondria, they're little structures inside of our cells that break down the food that we eat to create ATP, which we use for muscle contraction or brain thinking, electricity creation inside of our neurons in our brain. But in order for your mitochondria to work well, they need oxygen. Well, how do we get oxygen into our bodies? We breathe, right? And so there's so much of breathing is automatic. If you go to sleep, you still breathe. If you exercise, you automatically breathe harder. You don't even need to think about it. But if we deliberately change our pattern of breathing, we can affect our nervous system. We can exercise better. So a powerful example of that is the birthday candle breath. Like if you're stressed, if you're nervous, if you're feeling anxious, that long, slow exhale feels so good. Just imagine like you're blowing out your birthday candles at your birthday party. I have 51 of them now. That's a lot of candles. You got to do a big exhale. But the long, slow exhales can help us to calm down almost instantaneously in the moment. So when we practice these little ideas, they can make a big difference in our lives.
Breathwork is something that we have been at HSN Mentoring, been talking to a lot of our coaches about. If you're struggling with sleeping, focusing on your breathing to kind of calm your brain down helps you get back to sleep or go to sleep. There's so much research around breath work and digestion, helping you be able to absorb the food better. I mean, it makes complete sense. And even like going into a stressful meeting, right? Before having that meeting, doing some good deep breaths. And, what are some of there's so many different types of breath work, right? The box breathing, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, 4 second hold. Then there's the 5-7-7. Like which one does it matter? Which one would you recommend that people start with? Or maybe start with birthday cake?
Yeah, start with the birthday cake. But basically, like, let's imagine that you need to get psyched up, right? You're walking into a meeting, you realize your energy is not quite there, or, you're walking into the gym, you've got a session to do either as a coach or as an athlete, as someone who's training or being trained or training someone else. And you're like, oh man, I just need to fire up a little bit here. So in that case, short, fast exhales help us to activate our nervous system and bring our energy levels up. So if you imagine an athlete on the start line of the 100-meter dash at the Olympics, what are they doing? Right? They're doing those hard, fast exhales. You can see them doing that. At the extreme level, you see this in tennis. When you see a tennis player hit the ball, they are exhaling as they hit the ball. Some of them even scream when they do that. And the data shows quite clearly that when we exhale in conjunction with a muscular contraction, we increase our power in that moment versus not linking up the breathing. So those short, fast exhales can psych you up. If, however, on the other end of the spectrum, you notice that you are stressed, nervous, anxious, you're about to walk into a meeting, nerves are going, you're in a meeting, someone asks you a question, you've like, oh, or like, even at home, your partner says something that you find to be challenging to deal with in that instance. Don't know where I ever got that idea from. Definitely Judith telling me that I'm the one saying those sorts of things. In those moments, we do the long, slow exhale. And it feels weird because you've got to take the time to do it. But if someone's watching you do that, they're like, they're just collecting themselves, or they're taking some time to think about an answer. And it buys you a little bit of time, plus it sends signals into the stress region of your brain that calms that area of your brain down. That enables us to settle. That enables us to bring our attention into the present moment. That enables us to respond rather than react. So by simply altering the speed of your exhale, short, fast, sharp, increases your activation level. Long, slow, smooth, calms us down. That's the easiest way for people to get started.
Yeah.
More advanced box breathing can help you to navigate very difficult situations that are longer in time. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out has been shown to calm your nervous system down and increase your heart rate variability if you're into tracking that. So there's loads more deeper levels that you can go into, but the simple experimentation around the speed of your exhale is a great place to get started.
There's such a correlation with how we feel and how our mind is going, right? Like our thoughts and how we feel, what's going on in our mind, and like the actual physiological things that are happening inside of our body, right? So if our heart rate's racing, our mind's going to start going a little bit faster usually. And then breath work will actually allow you to calm your body so that your mind actually gets kind of calmed down too. So, it's a two-way connection, not just one way.
It's actually, I would even submit, it's probably a three-way connection, right? Mind, body, emotions. So how do we feel? What are we thinking? What's our body doing? It's the act, think, feel continuum. And if you think about the vast majority of the world, how do they function? They function and they have a feeling, an emotion, which then triggers certain thoughts inside of their head, which then results in certain actions. It's sort of backwards. Yet, if you look at elite high performers, they do the opposite. They control their physiology, which then enables them to have certain psychology, their thoughts, which then enables them to have certain emotions. So it's the average reaction is feel, think, act, but yet I believe that world-class performers do the opposite. They act, think, feel. So how do we get control of our bodies under difficult circumstances? One of the easiest things that we can do is bring your attention to your breath, slow your breathing down, or speed it up if you need to get psyched up. But in general, it's usually calm ourselves down. Take those few deep breaths, settle the mind, bring it into the present moment, feel calmer, feel more in control. Then that enables us to respond to the challenge rather than react to the situation, because reactions generally don't go very well unless you're hyper trained to deal with that situation, which, most of us aren't unless you're a special forces or SWAT soldier or something like that.
I was just thinking
operative.
The SEALs.
Yeah, the SEALs train for that, right? The SWAT teams train for that. There's specific things that you enable yourself to do. Athletes will do that as well. If you watch them on the start line, they are usually using some sort of a breath work to get themselves into the ideal performance state, to navigate that feeling that we're all having. But the wonderful benefit is it's not just about performance, it's also about health and well-being. You mentioned earlier about breath work helping with digestion, right? When we're stressed, blood flow is directed in our bodies towards your arms and legs and away from the digestive system, because we don't care if we digest food. We just need to survive by running or fighting, the fight or flight response. When we do breath work, when we do meditation, when we go for a walk, when we get outside in nature, when we surround ourselves with people that we love and trust who support us, we get into more parasympathetic nervous system activation. Blood flow shifts from the arms and legs because we're no longer in survival threat mode and blood flow returns to the internal organs to pick up those vitamins, minerals, carbs, proteins, fats that we need to survive, those digested molecules, so that those then circulate throughout the body to give us what we need to have the energy to rebuild the tissues. So it really does have health impacts as well as benefits for our ability to perform.
We're talking a lot about like the initial response and why in the immediate term is breath work is really important. But what about long-term effects? Like if you're doing this consistently, what's the long-term effect of really controlling all of this?
Yeah, the really interesting thing that we've discovered about breathing, and let's just lump meditation in there as well a little bit, because breath work is a form of meditation. Just think about meditating and using your breath as an anchor. It's all intertwined. It's that mind, body, emotion connection. One of the coolest things that we've discovered is that our bodies do adapt. We do change in response to breathing. My initial doctoral research 20 years ago was about how when we exercise and control our breathing during exercise, like just holding your breath as you're running or nasal breathing or breathing to a certain pattern, you actually decrease your responsiveness to the exercise. You can control your breathing better during exercise. You can train the control of breathing such that your technique determines the movement, not your urge to get to the next breath, right? You're not in rowing, you're not rushing to the next stroke because you're out of breath. You're doing the strokes the way they're supposed to be done in order to link in breathing and allow that to occur. That happens in running, that happens in cycling, that happens in swimming, that happens in paddling. Think about lifting weights in the gym, breathing in alignment with the contraction, the concentric or eccentric phases of the exercise. Like we can link our breathing and train our breathing to align with our movements being trained. And that actually enables us to do the movement so much better. But what we're also discovering is it's not just physical, it's also mental. When we do breath work, when we do meditation, there are changes in the structure of the brain. The white matter tracts inside the brain, the deep parts of the brain that connect the different regions of the brain together, develop more myelin, which is the fatty deposits that go around our nerves to protect them from damage and reinforce the networks. Those change, they get stronger, they get more connected. There's more neurons that get built. So it changes us both physically in terms of our ability to do what we want to do in the gym, when we're running, when we're moving, but it also changes the brain such that it's easier for us to get calm and to stay calm in moments of challenge.
That is really interesting that the brain matter actually changes the more consistent that you're doing this yourself. For coaches that are listening to this podcast and even gym owners, what would you say to them as they're starting to introduce this idea of breath work to their own clients?
I think there's some really easy things that we can do. First of all, we can do it ourselves. Let's say that you're walking in, you're going to have a team meeting. Take a few deep breaths right before you begin your meeting and watch how you calm down and watch how everyone else calms down with you. Second thing that you can do is as a group, don't be afraid to practice 2 to 3 rounds of breath work. You can experiment with box breathing. You can experiment with the breath of fire. You can experiment with the birthday candle breath. The other really cool thing that you can do is encourage your trainers to use breath work with their clients, which is as simple as be aware of your breathing as you're doing the exercises. And really cool, be aware of your breathing in between your exercises. Because if you breathe long, slow, deep, relaxing breaths in between sets, guess what? You recover and regenerate faster. So you can set yourself up for a great workout. You can set yourself up for a great training session. You can elevate the performance of your athletes or the people that you are working with. I consider everyone's an athlete. Anyone who's like in your gym doing the work, they can elevate their performance, but also help them to recover more quickly in between sets, enabling them to get through the workout at a higher level more consistently. It's really cool how you can weave it in almost every aspect of the work that we do.
I love that. Try it yourself first, do an experiment. And, you've done a lot of work with precision nutrition. Pitching things as experiments is always a great thing because there's not as much pressure. Like, hey, just try it and see how you feel. Let me know how you feel. There's no pressure here. So totally, I love that.
Right. And it may work. It may not. One type of breath work might work for you. Another, may not. It's like different types of exercise, right? Some people like yoga. Some people like running. Some people like CrossFit. Some people like paddleboarding. It doesn't matter what it is. All of them are beneficial. You just need to find what works for you.
I love that. All right, let's talk about something that's gotten pretty popular in the CrossFit space in regards to recovery and performance, the ice baths, like all the different options of basically cold plunges, jump into freezing cold water. And the interesting thing is your breath work during the first 30 seconds in the cold arena is huge to calm yourself down, because it is, I'm sure you've done it before, but it's an adventure.
Yeah. So back in 2016, I was at a conference in Switzerland. I was speaking and a buddy of mine was there, and he's friends with Wim Hof, and that's quite a while ago. So after our session one day, he's like, Greg, we're going to go swimming tonight. It's December in Switzerland. It's snowing. We're going to go swimming in Lake Geneva. And I was like, are you out of your mind? Like, no. He's like, come on, it'll be great. So we went down in the middle of the night.
It'll be great.
In downtown Zurich, and we got into the lake. It's snowing everywhere, and he kept me in there for 10 minutes. We did the full Wim Hof breathing techniques, and I was hooked. Loved it. The next night, we actually brought 20 people down and took a whole bunch of attendees at the Titan Summit into the water, and it was fun. And then I've done it intermittently ever since, but last winter, in the middle of many lockdowns, and I just felt really rough one day. Just wasn't happy, and I was struggling, and I felt super depressed. And everyone has ups and downs, and I was definitely in one of those down moments. And I live by the lake in Toronto, Canada, near Lake Ontario. And in February, it was very cold. It was snowing, and there was ice out on the lake. And I was like, I'm going in. So broke a hole in the ice and went in. And I ended up staying for 5 minutes, did the full breath work, got out, and I was like, I feel amazing. And I began to dig into the research, and the research shows that there's not only are there physiological benefits to cold water immersion, but there are also emerging data that suggests that there's a significant mental health benefit as well. And so I've been doing it pretty much every day ever since. I'm almost, I guess now, it's over a year of going in almost every day, and it makes a huge difference. But the breathwork in combination with cold water seems to do amazing things. So let's break that out. What happens when we do breath work is obviously we settle the nervous system down, take those deep breaths, you blow off all of your carbon dioxide, your blood and your body becomes slightly basic. You have to be very careful because you can pass out under those circumstances. So don't do this alone, which is why during the breath work in cold water, you do some hyperventilation followed by a breath hold. When you hold your breath, your oxygen levels drop, but your CO2 levels go back up, such that you have an urge to breathe. And so the alternating hyperventilation and breath holds enables you to keep cycling through, getting rid of your carbon dioxide and then allowing it to back up again while keeping your nervous system calm as you're in this freezing cold water, which is super stressful for you because the nerve endings in your skin cannot detect the difference between cold and pain. In fact, they interpret them both in exactly the same way. So that's why cold feels painful. The nerve endings interpret it as pain. The cool thing is once you're in there for a little while, your nervous system settles. Mm-hmm. I've done some heart rate measurements and heart rate variability measurements as I'm in there, and I'll be maybe 90 standing on, 90 beats per minute standing on the beach. As soon as I'm in there and I've done a round or two of breathing, it settles down 50, 40, 35. And then as soon as you emerge again and you start shivering, your heart rate goes back up. So it's a great way to calm the nervous system and then also get a little bit of an adrenaline spike, which then triggers the release of white blood cells to go circulate throughout your body to fight off any invaders. So it's a really interesting physiological approach. I hope I've explained it okay, but I'm a big believer in it. I practice it fairly often. I think it's awesome just for calming you down and keeping your mind settled.
There is more and more research showing the mental health benefits and just fighting inflammation, good for recovery. I've seen a lot of different types of ice machines kind of pop up where you can plug it into a freezer. We're in South Florida, so the exact opposite of where you are. You're not going to find a lake with any ice near us. So lots of different options. I know my husband bought a horse trough, like that you would put hay or something in, and they fill it up with 150 pounds of ice, and they'll do it once a week. So, different ways. What's the ideal recommended? You've mentioned 5 minutes, you've mentioned 10 minutes. most of our people, when they do it 3 minutes. Like, what's the most ideal time for, and when is too long for like an ice immersion, cold immersion?
So we did a study on this at my lab at the University of Toronto a few years ago. And what we did is we took track and field athletes, we took them out onto the track. They did sprint intervals and then eccentric plyometrics. So we made them as sore as we possibly could. And then either they sat in a chair and did nothing, or they sat in the water up to their waist for either 5 minutes or 10 minutes. We found that the 5-minute duration seemed to be a little bit better than either sitting or the longer duration. And we also looked at the temperature. And so we had 5 degrees Celsius or 10 degrees Celsius. We'd have to convert that into Fahrenheit, but 0 is freezing. So 5 degrees is like really cold. 10 degrees is like a cold bath, whereas 5 would be sort of like sitting in ice. And we found that 5 degrees seemed to be a little bit better than 10 degrees. However, the key thing is if it gets too cold, it actually has the opposite effect. It triggers a stress response. So you've got to find that balance between, like I said, be cold enough to decrease your blood flow and decrease your nervous system activation, but not so cold that it triggers that stress, pain response. Similarly, duration is the same thing. You want to be in, I would say, like 3 to 5 minutes is totally fine. Longer durations may actually have the opposite effect. So it's, for all of us, we need to find the temperature that works for us, but also the duration that works for us as well. And it's debatable about whether it does anything to inflammatory markers. We didn't find that much of a change in terms of inflammation. We did find a bit of a difference in terms of performance, and especially in terms of nervous system activation. So it's really good for calming the nervous system down and speeding performance. Believe it or not, the data on inflammation is it's still to be resolved. Let's say there's a lot of confusion still around that one.
That's interesting. So after, you would recommend, like after your workout or on a day that is a good recovery day for you to do that ice immersion, not necessarily before.
Yeah, definitely not before, because it decreases blood flow, right? So we don't want to be doing anything that decreases blood flow before workout. Similarly, if we think about cold water immersion as a recovery modality that speeds you to better performance more often, much like massage therapy might, or compression gear would probably do similar things, we have to be careful with it. Because let's say that it does actually decrease inflammation. We know that massage therapy decreases inflammation. We know that compression can decrease inflammatory markers. The problem is that inflammation is the process through which we rebuild and regenerate our muscles. It's actually really good. It's how we heal. Think about, you cut your finger, it gets red, it gets inflamed, it gets swollen, but then it heals afterwards, right? Like when you do a workout, you're tearing your muscles apart. It heals, repairs, and regenerates through the inflammatory process. We want that to happen. If we interrupt that, you actually slow down your adaptation to all of the training that you're doing. That's why taking anti-inflammatory medications after workout, if you're sore, is probably not a good idea, because you block that inflammatory process. The problems occur when inflammation becomes chronic. So you do a hard workout and then you're super stressed at work, and then something challenging happens in your personal life and you're just being flooded with stress hormones constantly all day long for days, weeks, months on end. That's when we get into a situation where cardiovascular disease risk increases, because you're flooded with cortisol and adrenaline all the time. That's when your risk for cancer increases, because stress depresses your immune system over the long term. That's when we have increased risk for depression and anxiety, because our mental health and the neurons inside of our brains are affected by stress and stress hormones. So acute stress is really good. Chronic stress is not. And so I won't go into cold baths every day, but probably once a week on a day when I feel like I've just had it. And I definitely use it as a mental reset. Similarly with massage therapy, won't do it every day. Definitely once a week. Maybe on recovery weeks, a couple times, but in a training block, probably wouldn't use it. So anyway, I hope I'm explaining that about how to use it and when to use it a little bit better, and not confusing anyone with all that chat about inflammation there.
No, I think that's really helpful. And I think it's a good transition for us to talk about, hey, we talked about cold water plunges. We talked about breath work. Like, People have been struggling now more than ever before. The past few years have been really tough. How do we get back to a place where we're thriving and fulfilled and full of joy and happiness? Like how do we transition to this place where we know we want to be, and just might seem a little bit out of our reach?
You know what? I think that at this point, it's probably a good time to leave physiology behind. And I'm a physiologist, so it's just super hard for me to do, and just get into some really practical things that all of us can do right now. And this comes from many discussions with loads of my, friends who are pretty elite performers in various different disciplines, and colleagues of mine who are really good psychologists. And what we've all kind of settled on is the people, places, and pursuits. And so thinking about who is it in our lives, who are the people who elevate us? Who are the people that make us happy? Who are the people that support us? Who are the people that love us unconditionally? And let's try to find those people and spend more time with them. Have the dinner parties, go for the walks, do the workouts together, go to the beach together, go for the bike rides together, whatever it is, that just let's spend quality time with the people who elevate us, and laugh and talk and plan and, do fun things. That lends us into then the places. Think about where are the places that you can go, the environments that you love. Could be the gym, could be a chair or desk or couch in your house. It could be your cottage, it could be the beach, but knowing where you feel the happiest. For me, it's the mountains. For my wife, it's the beach, right? Like we know we have to ski and surf in order for us to be thriving. We definitely go from the snow of the mountains where I'm happy to, the hot beaches down in Central America where Judith loves things. I like it too, but we will move back and forth. So where are the places that elevate you?
Yeah.
And then the final piece of the puzzle is the pursuits. What is it that you love to do? Like what fuels you? What sparks you? What makes you excited? What do you spend your spare time on? And let's spend a little bit more time, effort, energy, attention in those areas. So find the people, figure out the places, and then let's go after the pursuits. And that together, I think, will enable us to get back to like more joy. We're not going to be there all the time. We're not going to be happy all the time. We shouldn't be, but we'll be happier more often. We'll be doing joyful things more often. We will laugh. We will have fun. We will play again, right? So that's really where I want all of us to go to.
I love that. People, places, and pursuits. I've had many conversations with there's a licensed mental health practitioner in the CrossFit space, Dr. Christina Migliare. We've done a lot of stuff around mental health over the past couple of years. And she came up with this mental fit framework. And one of the things on there that stood out to me was hobbies. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I guess my hobby is CrossFit. She's like, no, Nicole, you own a gym. Your hobby cannot be CrossFit. Like you need a hobby. And I think so many times as gym owners or even coaches, like we're so busy wanting to help others grow our businesses, reach XYZ metrics that we forget like, oh no, I have to do fun things too. Like this is my life. And yeah, it was an eye-opening experience for me where she was like, no, you need an actual hobby that's not working out.
And we're very lucky, right? Like we get to do work that we love.
Yeah.
The fact that I get to do public speaking as my job is hysterically funny because I absolutely love it. I like research. I love fitness. So I love researching and writing books, right? Like it's amazing. But my hobby, which I've developed, is photography, right? My camera's never too far away. Not photography on my phone because I end up checking my email, but like actually going out and carrying my camera around with me for walks, or when I take my kids to the park, leave the phone behind and bring the camera. So that for me has been my hobby, which has enabled me to, read books on the subject, watch YouTube videos on the subject, practice it when I'm outside, which gets my head out of work. And I'm never selling a photo. Like I'm not very good, right? Like, definitely not making money as a photographer. I think my photos of my kids are awesome, but no one else wants to see them. So it's like this little thing where I can direct my attention, which is so good for me because then when I come back to work, I'm clear, had some time, haven't been thinking about it. I can see it from a different perspective. So yeah, whether it's cooking or art or music or photography or travel, whatever it is, finding and cultivating those hobbies is so important and so powerful for us.
Yeah. So I guess a question for our listeners, like, what is your hobby? And if you don't have one, what could you make a hobby in 2023 and beyond? I love
Let us
that.
know.
Yeah, let us know. You have a new book coming out, Powerhouse, Elevate Your Energy, Optimize Your Health, Surcharge Your Performance. As we wrap up today, tell our audience a little bit about this book. Why should they read it?
So Powerhouse was basically everything that we've just spoken about, but a couple years ago, what's the problem? Everyone's burned out. Okay, so how do we solve that? We all need more energy. What's the physiological mechanism for that? Mitochondria. Begin to explore, how do we fuel our mitochondria? Breathwork. How do we spark our mitochondria? Movement. How do we keep our mitochondria healthy? That's energizing them. That's hormesis. That's hot, cold, sunlight, like all of those biohacking tactics. And then once you have that dialed, we get more energy. So then how do you spend it? That's into the thriving component, which we talked about, people, places, and pursuits. So it's a pathway, breathe, move, energize, thrive, that I think that we can use to help us to get to a place where we are thriving, where we are joyful, where we are flourishing, where we have fun and we can play, but more importantly, do really, really well at the things that we care about the most in our lives. So it's an idea that I think will help everyone's health and wellness improve, but also for all of us to be able to perform to our potential. So if anyone wants to check it out, I would be deeply honored and grateful. It's called Powerhouse. It's available everywhere. And we'd love it if you checked it out. So thank you.
Awesome. Dr. Greg Wells, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We will link all of your information in the show notes. We'll link the book in the show notes so that people can find it. I think at the end of the day, in order for us to make the greatest impact on our clients, we have to add more tools to our toolbox. We need to understand how we can best support our clients. And the work that you're doing allows us to have those tools to understand how we can help our clients ultimately live their best and healthiest lives. So thank you for all the work that you do.
Nicole, thanks for giving me a chance to chat to your audience and your team and your community. I'm so grateful. And thank you for all the work that you do. It's awesome.
I hope you enjoyed that podcast episode. How do you do with addressing breath work in your coaching experience? We know that if we are slowing down our breath, even before meals, it's going to help with digestion. There's a ton of research around controlling your breath work and stress management, and even your ability to fall asleep. Something as simple as box breathing, is going to be able to calm our central nervous system down. Do you work with clients on that? Do you practice with them? Is that ever a habit that you work on with clients? Ultimately, I think a lot of us became nutrition coaches because we wanted to help people with nutrition. But when we realized that when we can address all of these other factors, something as simple as breath work, it's going to help with nutrition because digestion is better, but it's also going to help with stress management and mindset. And those things, your thoughts influence your actions. How you feel influences the foods that you crave and what you end up eating. All of these things are interconnected. And when we can use a more holistic approach when coaching clients, we're going to be able to make such a greater impact in our communities to transform lives. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review. It really does help this podcast reach more people. If you enjoyed this episode and you think your followers would enjoy it as well, take a screenshot, share it on social media, and please don't forget to tag us at HSN_mentoring. We'll see you back here next week.